Welcome to the Twisted Pint Tavern. Today we're visiting r/Ask Reddit to answer, D&D players of Reddit, what's the stupidest or most hilarious thing you've done? Before we get into the stories, if you have one you'd like to potentially see featured in a video, make sure to go into the comments after watching this and leave it there for me to read. The best ones could get featured in a part 2. Now on to the stories. Had a player wish that his brother had never existed. His brother was the reason he became an adventurer. He literally wished himself out of existence. And then a reply, wouldn't that just mean he wished himself into another job? And then OP says, imagine playing through a campaign as an accountant. Wishes are very dangerous. They can be a lot of fun and very powerful, but you have to very carefully phrase it. Our druid had a little companion dragon that we found in our travels. He didn't do a lot, but he was useful for scouting, a little extra damage, carrying things to us in combat, fun conversations, etc. His name was Paddy, and he was a drunken Irish dragon for some reason. I love that. Well, we found a magical necklace made of orbs. Each orb could be taken and thrown for a large amount of fire damage. As the rogue, I offered to carry it because I could sneak around and my magical abilities were very limited, so it would be useful in a fight. But the druid argued that we should give it to Paddy, and he could give the orbs out if needed in a fight. Well, a little while later, we were in a cave, and said druid set off a trap which sent fire sweeping down towards us. Not a big deal, we all rolled to evade, most took half damage other than me, who took none because rogue. Then we remembered the necklace. In its description, it states that should the wearer take any fire damage, every orb would explode. Wave after wave of insane fire damage assaulted the party. Paddy's head was immediately separated from its neck and instantly killed. The rest of the party was reduced to a handful of hit points. Oh, except for me. I made my saves against all the fire damage, and because of evasion, I took no damage instead of half. The party had to portal out immediately due to the waves of enemies coming to see what all the fuss was about, and due to everyone else being almost dead. I grabbed Paddy's parts before I left, and we did manage to resurrect him, but he opted not to adventure with us any longer, instead spending his days at the pub, not talking very much. Probably should have given me the damn necklace. Yeah, definitely don't want to put an exploding necklace on your familiar's head, but at the same time, that could have been your head that was severed. Was playing a Barbarian. The scenario sent us back in time several thousand years to okay, this is far future and back in time, I'm confused. Ended up knocking out a couple of battalions of German soldiers over a pot of stew I didn't want to share. DM, roll D100 to see the percentage you knock out before they take the soup from you. Me, rolls 100. DM, shit. Morg takes a pot of stew and sits alone at a table and enjoys himself. Knocking out every soldier in a camp with a pot of soup is truly a Barbarian-styled story. Not my campaign, but a character gave the players a small black orb and said, use this if you're in trouble. Long story short, they pissed off a huge monster they were not supposed to. The characters threw the orb at the monster. The orb teleported the monster back to the Adventurers Guild, where it proceeded to destroy most of the city before it could be killed. So use this if you're ever in trouble does not mean use it on something if you're in trouble. Usually that's part of the instructions. I played a few rounds of Cthulhu. The characters were prepared by the game master, which had the benefit that I could play the character authentically without fearing his demise, as I did not put any effort into its creation. I played a French martial arts specialist/actor, who at the same time suffered from the delusion of being a hero. To become a hero, he had his secret pills, which was some kind of drug that pushed him to be more reckless. I went out into some unholy storm to fight it with my fists. A letterbox, one of the victims of that unholy storm, flew at my character, and I decided to roundhouse kick it. Yeah, I missed, and was killed by a flying letterbox. I learn every day how humbling D&D can be, like getting domed by a flying letterbox. Had a campaign where the players needed a MacGuffin from inside this giant's house thing on an iceberg. Started simple enough, they scaled the outside and came in through a tower bit on the top. Saw enemies through the hole in the floor and decided to attack. Fair enough. But then they started throwing alchemist fire from an upper floor to the ground floor of a building they were in. But then they also threw barrels down through the hole in the floor, giant-sized barrels that not 10 minutes prior they'd inspected and knew to be full of oil. Down into a room which also had oil barrels. The party literally firebombed the campaign into oblivion. Ultimately, it was for the best, as we switched to Pathfinder after that. You see, a lot of people play D&D with battle mats, so they're used to a two-dimensional environment. Adding that third dimension and consequences from third dimension, like, I don't know, burning the bottom floor of the tower that you're currently standing on, really spices up a game. Me not realizing what a Graveknight was and storing said armor in my bag of holding was an interesting time when it regenerated in my bag of holding, and flinging everything I had in there everywhere. Well, at least the worst thing it did was chuck stuff out of your bag. I could see that ending a lot worse. I, a level 2 wizard, tried opening an Infernal puzzle box. I am no longer playing as a wizard. What happened to the wizard? I have no idea what could have possibly happened. DMing a bunch of teenage boys, they break into the hold of a robber baron and kill him and henchmen. Lots of treasure, so naturally they each simultaneously decide that now is the time to stab their buddies and claim it all. When the smoke clears, one severely wounded survivor is standing over his equally severely wounded partner. We did it! It's all ours! We're rich! Rich! I throw for the bystander NPCs, whom they've totally forgotten. An exasperated scullery maid picks up a poker and lays them both out. They are dumped in the forest in only their boots, and she sets up as a lady. I think this might be the first case of TPK by scullery maid that I've ever seen, and I love it. Sadly, my story of the stupidest player stars me. We were playing Princes of the Apocalypse and had infiltrated the Tower of Wind cultists in the dead of night. I forget exactly what happened, but we needed to subdue a room of sleeping guards. My character decided that shock and fear would be the way to go here. He kicked down the door and demanded everyone remain still or die. It was loud. The floors above and below heard. We had nowhere to go but the window. There were no survivors. Runner-up is the entire party giving most magic items, along with the reins of the group, to the character with an intelligence of 3, and he played that very well. I would love to know how he played that very well, because an intelligence of 3 can only lead to some fantastic stories. This one comes from literally last night's session. The party was on their way to a volcano in a desert, long story, and ended up taking their cart past the ghost town. Out stepped about 20 bandits, thieves, etc., who were using the place as a hideout. The bandits didn't rush in right away, but all of the archers and other ranged attackers ready to fire. The monk stepped forward and said confidently, "We're just passing by, but by all means, I dare any of you who wish to die to fire at me," and held out his arms. Now, he was planning on using his deflect missiles feature on all of the attacks. See, the source he was reading from before doing this was a non-official D&D website, and it inaccurately stated that a monk could use their deflect missiles feature on any attack, and then use their reaction to return one of the missiles if they reduce the damage to 0 with said feature. The actual rules state that you use your reaction to deflect a single missile, and then can return it as part of the same reaction if you reduce it to 0. We all laughed a bit when this was clarified, and I asked him what he wanted to do instead, since he just made a simple mistake. And I wasn't going to punish him for a website being inaccurate. And this is why I love my players. He said, "No, go for it. I was wrong, but this is still 100% something my character would do." So over a dozen arrows, musket shots, and crossbow bolts flew his way. He successfully deflected one of them, but got pincushioned by the rest. He survived and combat broke out. Definitely a fun time, but also quite the learning moment. Thank you guys for tuning into today's video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and ring that bell, and don't forget to tell me about your favorite stupid or hilarious moments in the comments below. The best stories might get featured in a part 2 of this video, and I look forward to hearing about all of your fantastic tales. Anyway, I'll see all of you wonderful tavern patrons in the next video. Toodaloo.